Reliably, just have universities.
Actually sit down, so I'll have to do an introduction.
Okay.
Can we leave our stuff up here?
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to the TGP Iceland March Capstone Project presentations. Over the past week, our students have been learning about Iceland's application of sustainable energy development, and they've been working on their own project, the TGP Capstone, which is entrepreneurial solutions to real-world sustainability problems. And now they will be giving 15-minute presentations with 5 to 10 minutes of questions. So the first group, Ecological Restoration and Resiliency Organization, will be up first. Okay? Cool. The microphone is just here. You don't have to pass it around. Just speaking. Okay. And will one of you just offer the slideshow?
Heard.
Okay. Start if you want.
So for our Capstone Project, we created a private organization called Ecological Restoration and Resiliency Organization, or ARROW for short.
So this is our team. I'm Roxanne Habal. I'm studying biology and environmental science at University of Iowa.
I'm Claire Fitzgerald, studying geography at Mount Holyoke College.
I'm Eve Halleck, studying International Sustainable Development and Resource Management at Antioch University.
And my name is Daniel Gabriel, student at University of South Florida, majoring in environmental science and policy with a minor in political science. And then here's our presentation outline. So first we're going to start with our golden circle and then working towards sustainable development goals. After that, we'll just go down to our methods, our resources, an example of how we would operate, the funding behind that operation, and then lastly, considering why we would be preferred over a government agency.
So, to start off, why are we doing this? We all know that climate change is becoming increasingly more apparent. We are doing this to support communities and ecosystems against extreme and frequent natural disasters. The current needs of long-term environmental protection are not sufficient, especially in an ever-changing political climate. So, how are we going to do this? We are focusing on long-term ecological restoration and resilience after natural disasters by increasing environmental thresholds. Our methods will change with every different ecosystem that we are working with, as every ecosystem and natural disaster requires a different set of requires something different. But, for example, if we were working in a coastal region prone to flooding, we would focus our efforts on restoring natural defenses such as coastal wetlands, mangroves, riparian zones, and really just all the things of that nature. So, again, what are we? We are a private organization that is addressing long-term resilience and restoration after environmental disasters. We will be funded through national and international grants such as the Nature Conservancy, USAID, and the Global Fund for Disaster Risk Reduction. We will work directly with leaders and groups of the communities that are impacted, which is another thing that sets us apart. We are not just coming in and making a bunch of changes and leaving, but we are going into these communities, setting them up for success with their support, and becoming a team with them. So, yeah. While Arrow covers a lot of sustainable development goals, our main focuses will be good health and well-being. The safety and well-beings of citizens will drastically improve with effective and permanent climate change mitigation. Effects of natural disasters will be lessened, increasing physical safety and mental well-being. Living somewhere that you constantly have to be afraid of what is going to happen, how bad is the next hurricane, or whatever is exhausting and bad for you. So this should help. Additionally, sustainable cities and communities. Ecological climate change mitigation will increase communities' independence and long-term sustainability. The environment will be healthier, but also need for urban reconstruction after disasters will be less frequent. Things will be more secure and able to withstand a lot more. But overall, the main goal that we will be addressing is climate action. Our overall goal is to support a healthy and thriving ecosystems for the sake of a healthier planet. Ecological resilience not only increases environment's natural defenses, but their ability to just function properly as an environment. So, for our method, we decided to implement the FIRE method, which stands for First Contact, Investigate, Restore, and Establish. So, to begin, communities will reach out to established networks of international environmental organizations, such as the UNDRR, Conservation International, and the IUCN. Those networks will then contact us and let us know what disaster has happened, where it's happened, what are the effects, and where we need to go. From then, we will send a team out to investigate, take a poll of the situation, see what supplies are needed, manpower, financial support, what budget we can work with, everything like that to just lay the groundwork. Then we will go in and restore the ecosystems and their natural defenses through increasing their environmental threshold, which is how much a disturbance an environment can take before it like overfloods or something like that. Flooding's on the mind because that's what we'll be working with. So these restoration practices are dependent on whatever ecosystem we're in and whatever natural defenses or whatever natural disasters they're facing. So, for example, in Florida, which we will be speaking about in a moment, it's a very hurricane-prone area that is often very affected by flooding. So we will rehabilitate and strengthen natural resources such as coral reefs, mangroves, wetlands, things of that nature. And we will also do pretty much everywhere invasive species removal, just they're always a problem, and plant restoration, specifically for erosion control within Florida. The final step to our project is establishing monitoring and social programs for long-term success. We will invest in long-term ecological monitoring programs to observe changes in the systems we have restored over a long period of time. Methods are dependent on the ecosystems in this way as well, but overall we are going to be tracking the recovery rates after disturbances to see if our thresholds have increased, if our restoration practices and resiliency are being effective at all, and if not, where can we strengthen them. Finally, we will help implement educational outreach programs within the communities so that they can have independent control over these monitoring practices and just a general understanding of effective restoration. The overall goal is to put ecological stewardship back in the hands of communities. There's no one more equipped, knowledgeable, in tune with an environment than the people who are living in it, and it's their right to be able to have control over what's going on. So, revisiting past projects. If we ever find ourselves with a surplus of revenue, which may not happen because these are all super expensive and constantly happening, but if we do, we will use that freedom of time and revenue to revisit our past projects, to review progress through the monitoring that we have set up, and further restoration efforts where needed. So we'll do this by going through, reviewing the data, seeing how things have changed, if any progress has been made in the resiliency over time. We'll reevaluate our focus and strengthen efforts where need be, and we can also revitalize, revamp our education programs, and add new monitoring and restoration plans in, and just adapt and grow with the situation.
So our key resources being what we require to actually achieve this. So with our managing personnel, this would be the people that are in charge of hiring, training, and assigning tasks. So management personnel would oversee restoration projects and help in guaranteeing success. These people would primarily come from our organization to streamline workflow execution and help maintain efficiency. Our laboring personnel includes both generalized and specialized labor. So for specialized, we're talking ecologists, botanists, project managers, and any other key member, who we would decide who would be a key member in each project. Our general labor is typically general physical labor, so restorationists, planters, truck drivers, more of a physical laboring job. Because each project is considered multifaceted, our institution will require what we call a joint operation liaison to coordinate with the various professionals and collaborators working on these restoration projects. This will be where budgeting is monitored and requests are processed. There are many benefits of having unique approaches to each location. However, this also raises questions about the logistics of our plans. For example, to get supplies for restoration, there are some widespread organizations, such as STS Global, that can be used in a variety of projects, but we'll also have to look towards local institutions for support.
So we looked at Florida as an example because just in the past decade, we've been hit by 11 hurricanes, and these storms are, they're causing an upward trend in damage costs because they're becoming consistently more severe. So our solution is to invest money and energy into restoration, hoping to mitigate the future damage costs. So Florida's first lines of defense is for coastal weather is the coral reefs, mangroves, and marshes, which are threatened by unsustainable development practices along the coast and kind of like the water industry changing due to human activity. We're focusing on Fort Pierce because it's a small town that's largely low income and is prone to flooding. So here's a little budget breakdown. It's an example of work years, but again, we would want to communicate with the local community to keep in mind their priorities and also have more information post like the first contact phase based on like the research. So for work years, we estimated about $21 million in restoration, and a large sum of this money would be towards wetland and mangrove restoration, which is a lot of replanting and creating a natural buffer. And then there's storm runoff and filtration, where we'll be working with infrastructure specialists and engineering. And then there's management and outreach, where we'll return to old projects and monitor and inform public on how restoring local ecosystems, like how they could do their part to help themselves in the future with
So funding would be found from either government or private sources. So through government, we actually qualify for various funding programs. First, we would probably look through federal or state agencies such as FDEP or FEMA. Through FEMA, we have access to what's called the Beach Management Funding Assistance Program. It's a program in which private organizations can apply and receive for funding for any coastal and beach restoration, the state covering up to 75% of the costs of those programs. FEMA offers two similar programs, such as the Hazard Mitigation Grant and the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program, both also covering up to 75% of the costs of each of these restoration programs, with the total goal being of rebuilding areas for long-term mitigation. For public funding, crowdfunding through either direct donation or through donation sites such as Kickstarter or GoFundMe are also an option. However, we'd probably look more through philanthropic and foundation organizations such as the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Ford Foundation, since it's not uncommon that these foundations typically gift money to private organizations, especially when it comes to disaster relief.
For our communication methods, we ideally would like to be invited to the site by the local community themselves, which would allow us to have boots on the ground during and after a major disaster event to help them communicate the necessary information to these people. Each individual disaster and place is going to have different needs that need to be met, so it would be very adaptable to each event. And so to further get our name and message out there, we'll have the educational outreach programs and partnerships. So these programs will provide workshops and informational sessions, working with local communities, local educational institutions to implement research and collaboration in disaster relief, ecological restoration, and prevention in general, as well as empowering the local communities to have the knowledge and skills to then become local leaders themselves. They would then know how to support their communities during and after events, just in understanding how their action, both present and future, could help. And so we would pilot and establish these strategic partnerships with local organizations such as humanitarian, environment restoration, indigenous communication, communities, research institutions, to local governments in general, as well as collaboration and communication with government agencies. And then so some consideration to think about. The pros of our organization is that it's non-political and independent, so it would be the separation from governmental entities, which can make it more trustworthy in more unstable areas of the world. The local and government partnerships can allow for the creation of jobs, helping to boost the economy to recover faster, as well as creating a bridge between the public and private support systems. It would fill in the gaps of where government agencies might not be as strong, such as in areas where FEMA-like agencies might not exist in the first place. And so then the response time to these natural disasters would be more efficient, and we'd have the ability to adapt to the environment more quickly, especially since there's no one-size-fits-all solution to this. And there'd be less reliance on government budgets and funding with that faster response time. And then being supported by multiple outlets will also make us less vulnerable to changes in specific sources of funding. And so then cons to consider, the funding is extremely volatile. It would be difficult to maintain stable funding. We would need equal funding for immediate disaster relief, ecological restoration, and educational outreach programs. Logistically, it would be difficult because coordination between different countries have different regulations and policies, and so we'd have to create our own global logistics network. There would also be a balance between allocating the different resources for urgent aid and long-term sustainability efforts. So coordination between existing aid organizations would also be seen in competition for funding and resources. The lack of regulatory oversight as well means that countries could more easily take advantage of us as a private corporation, and local partnership and strict accountability would have to be implemented in order for this to succeed as a whole. But yet we don't want these organizations to become, or places to become solely dependent and reliant on us, and we want them to strive for empowerment and long-term resilience. And so creating and allocating the necessary resources, which would look at different geographically, politically, and natural disaster that occurred in general. So ensuring that we are supporting these areas from the start is important, but it's very hard to measure the success of these areas. And so overall, the feasibility of this project depends on the amount of funding and resources we could acquire. And then this is a summary slide of our business campus model. Sort of general bullet points here. Thank you. Any questions?
I think it's a really cool idea, but it's very big. So I'm just curious if you were thinking about maybe starting small, where would you start, and then how would you turn this organization from like this theoretical concept to like actually handling the disaster? Where would you start in the world? Like if you had to put a headquarters to be trying to deal with one type of natural disaster somewhere, where do you think you would start?
So our first example in the slideshow being in Florida, I'm biased because I live there. I would say somewhere that is, it doesn't have to be Florida, just anywhere that has regular impact from natural disasters to best get a handle of what exactly we'd be experiencing realistically instead of just theoretically. As to how small we would start, it could start as small as city, county, work your way up to state, maybe federal, and with luck and time and effort, international.
I have a question, Jake. Wanted to say, great presentation and nice job at tackling those challenges. In your opinion, what do you think is more valuable for your project right now? More people on the ground or additional funding? Bear in mind that people often think volunteers are free, but you need staff like paid professionals, and these projects can be public expenses.
I personally would say more funding at the moment, just to be able to get us off the ground, and the things that we are trying to accomplish, they will require more labor and some stuff like planting, all that stuff. What we need with going into a project is data collecting, figuring out where the gaps in resiliency are. So that would require a lot of monitoring, as we talked about, a lot of specialists to know exactly what to look for and how to overcome those challenges. So I think starting off with a small team of super funded people is the best way to go, and then they'll build from there.
Good job. Thank you.
Did they get all of our little kids?
Yeah, they get all of them.
Keeping it real down.
Does the brain thing with the Mac and Microsoft like ridiculously fast. It's a little wild. Cool. Okay.
So our project is looking at preparing rural communities or low population density communities for the influx of climate migrants. We just had an awesome presentation on coastal erosion and climate disaster. So we're going to talk a little bit more about being adaptive and evolutionary and thinking forward beyond just these climate risk moments. So we're going to go through a little intro about our why, how, what. And then we're going to look at the conceptual model, the more soft and abstract pieces of what we would like to do, basically our process for going in and creating a regenerative system and infrastructure in these low population density places. Then we'll look at a specific example of implementing that model and process in Bangladesh. And then at the end, we'll consider some of the more community and cultural pieces that obviously have to be interdependent to the infrastructure we're going to build. And as we have a quote here, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is kind of our mindset on evolving, not just putting out solutions.
So for our introduction, our team really focused on developing a model to support the evolution of climate readiness rather than a specific solution for conservation or prevention. We are a public-private partnership connecting government agencies with private sector developers. Our why is that sea level rise is already causing a lot of people to move inland, both in Virginia and Bangladesh and largely in the South Pacific area. Climate change is inevitable as we know it because we're here, but we need to be able to adapt the current energy and food and infrastructure systems because they are currently unsustainable. Just looking here at this map, you can see that hundreds of countries around the world are going to be facing this issue. It's not a small issue, it's a global issue, and you can see that it doesn't discriminate based off region or continent or anything of that sort. 14 out of 17 megacities across the globe are on coasts. 600 million people live less than 10 meters above sea level and along coastal regions. 2.4 million people currently live within 60 miles of the coast, so it's not a small issue in any stretch of the matter.
So what are we going to do? What's this process? What's our model? We're going to go into low population dense areas, rural areas, and provide them the resources to prepare for incoming climate migrations. This looks like supporting future independence among different infrastructure systems, including what we've got on the screen, affordable energy, water, and food. Those things working together, getting a solid infrastructure foundation is how we're going to enable sustainable communities, resilient communities. We're going to focus in our presentation on energy and water and the connection between those two things and kind of really looking at the interdependence pieces. But all of these SDGs are kind of built into one another, and generally we're going to touch on them all.
So that brings us to our what. Our what is, as a PPP, we have created a model for development of regenerative infrastructure to accommodate climate refugees. So as Carrie Ann mentioned, we really focused in on energy and water in this presentation and how they're interconnected with each other, with the community. And then we, at the end, take it a step further to kind of look at how we can then bring in other systems to this system as well to make everything like one big happy family.
Cool. So we're going to start off with our model. Again, a little more abstract, a bit more process-oriented. We're looking at the connection points, and then we'll apply that to the example. So starting out our sustainability complex and also kind of the key activities. What are we going to do and where is it going to happen? At the highest level, we are setting that foundational infrastructure support, again focusing right now on water and energy since those are the main two pieces of infrastructure needed for a community to come in and develop in a location. Then going down to our cities and towns, we're going to look at building more houses, more jobs, more agriculture, and creating more stability and security, making sure that they're both diversified and also have all of the things needed for long-term resiliency and adaptation. At a community level, we'll build the cultural exchanges, and in a certain sense, all of this starts at the community. We'll have to build relationships and cultural exchange between coastal and migrant communities. We can't just have coastal folks showing up in remote villages and being like, this is our land now. So we'll create opportunities for that exchange to happen. And on an individual level, further down the line, we'll ensure that all of these infrastructure developments come with education and technical support and job skills. So going into these rural communities and making sure that they're getting enriched and have ample opportunity to be participative in the growth of their region. So we kind of just talked about some of these, but we've got lots of stakeholders on the table, and we've got lots of channels of change. So our community stakeholders could be anything as large as religious groups, religious congregations and networks. They could be cultural centers. They could also be community leaders and school networks too. So in the U.S., like PTAs are a huge network of adults and leadership in a community. So tapping into kind of existing community networks that we have as well as individuals, and then using different channels to connect them to one another. So creating religious networks between the inland and migrant community religious groups, having shared religious holiday celebrations, inviting them to cultural festivals, inviting coastal migrants inland coastal. Again, this creating opportunities of exchange, using local markets and exchanges like farmers markets, again, another American example, exchanging in farmers markets and just creating opportunities for these two communities to start to intersect with one another. And then on the other end, on the business end, because we are a PPP, we are government and private connecting to one another, we do have stakeholders who are government agencies, who are going to be the utility companies, who are going to hire to actually build some of these infrastructure pieces. There's going to be all of our investors, like the World Bank of Development, could be a huge investor for our project, also a loan provider if we need. And then there's more folks on here too, obviously the actual like political leaders and like village leaders in the rural areas, and the landowners are another big stakeholder on the business side. Okay, that was the conceptual stuff. Those were all kind of big thoughts. Now we're going to dig in and apply it to an example. So we looked at Bangladesh, and we looked at migratory populations moving into northern Bangladesh. So we've got a big city here, Dhaka, and we're expecting them to move into that area in the circle, which is a low population density area. Right now in Bangladesh, about 29% of the population is on the coast. We can expect about 15 million climate migrants in the next 30 years. And we're preparing for about 1/4 of that population to move into the area in the circle. Some context about Bangladesh. They are a parliamentary democracy. They're actually doing some really cool renewable and energy generation stuff already. They've got some good insights and seem self-aware about the climate issue as is. They're about 91% Sunni Muslim, and they are kind of have two seasons, cool, dry, and cold up in the mountains, and very hot monsoon seasons, which are the climate risk piece. So they've got a lot of water, but it's only coming in during one season, and it's causing coastal erosion and floods. That's kind of our climate risk piece. And then for our numbers, when we're talking about budget, we're expecting to go from 750,000 households to nearly 4 million households in that circle area up there.
So leaning into that idea that one of our biggest climate risks in this area is our flooding, is our monsoon season, we first had to look at how to kind of mitigate that water, how to maintain it, how to figure out what to do with it. So the idea of bioswales came up first. Strategically positioning these, along the river within the community to act as like that first line of defense for flooding. Obviously, as you can see up here, they're processing 16 to 48 million gallons per day. That is not going to be the total water that we're needing to process, so there would need to be additional infrastructure. But again, these are pieces that can be added as we work down the line as needed. These bioswales are going to simultaneously act as a means of capture, but also a means of transport of this precipitation, of this flood water to our water reservoir.
In terms of energy, we decided to build a power plant and a small support hydropower plant.
The mic, yeah. Thanks. Just closer to the microphone. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So I'm gonna start.
Yeah, no problem.
In terms of energy, we're going to apply geothermal power plant and a smaller one as hydropower plant. The main thing here is enhanced geothermal system, which we chose because of high efficiency and a possibility to operate for decades with proper maintenance. Unlike traditional systems, this one doesn't require actually any natural underground
reservoir, which is great, like we don't have to take care of this or stress. We also don't need high geothermal activity beneath the earth, so that's also really nice. And why geothermal? Because it's stable, because it's there for us 24 hours per 7. Energy supply is independent. We don't have to rely on the sun, wind, or any other sources. As of this small hydro power plant, as I mentioned, it's going to be just a backup, and it's going to be a reservoir-based hydropower plant. It wouldn't be possible without the main thing here, so it's a water reservoir. The main goal of it is to collect water from monsoon seasons and also to protect us from floods, and we'll use this as an opportunity to run this hydropower plant and also to supply a geothermal power plant with water, like in the initial phase when we will inject water, and then when we will just adjust to the water uses when it's operating.
All right, so to kind of give you a visual of what all of that information was, we have the reservoir, which is central to the system. It's taking in our water from the community, from the bioswales, from all of these natural events that are occurring, and taking that water and putting it into our geothermal, our hydro systems, where it's being utilized in whatever facet matches. And then that energy that's generated is being put back into the community. This, in turn, is turning a climate disaster into a natural resource for us.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, we are going to have two systems, one of which is hydropower plant, a smaller thing which is going to operate during periods of higher demand when the monsoon rain is present. We're going to utilize Capstone turbines, which are the best for us because for low and medium water drops. It's also going to be of capacity around 10 megawatts. The bigger the main source of energy is geothermal power plant. We are going to apply here something really great, which is a very disruptive technology called gyrotron. Right now it is in the phase of research still, mostly in Europe done by Thermodrill, and in United States is VA's project. Thanks to this method, which uses high energy millimeter wave drilling to melt and vaporize rocks, we will be able to drill faster, more efficiently, and at greater depths. So you must also, yeah?
No, I was just saying 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So unlike traditional methods, this drilling reduces uses of tools and eliminates the need for larger amounts of drilling fluid. So we will also save the space on the surface, which is really crucial in here. We need the space for people. Two fun facts which are really nice here: we'll drill 10 times faster than normally, and we'll also save a lot of money, up to $150 million.
For this project to be successful, we have to have a stable foundation, and as previously mentioned, we're going to do that by building foundations within the community and within our partners, and building relationships within those two groups. Our partners are going to be mostly NGOs, businesses, and governments, and our big focus for that is growing our market. And not just fundraise, we're also trying to provide and self-sustain. So we're going to do that with strong capital resources made available by this project. Governments will be able to provide basic human services to local communities that were once impossible. Again, a huge attractor for this project. A short-term return on investment should be generated within the first 10 years of system operation, even with conservative estimates, so you'll get your money back fast, which is incredibly important for these countries and these nations that that don't have a lot of time and are already seeing these effects taking a hold on their countries. Religious ideology is also going to be a really important factor because, again, they are a predominantly Sunni Muslim nation where we're going to market to them as Sunni Muslims and how their investment in community solidarity, responsibility, and environmental stewardship will deepen their connection with Allah. It's going to be incredibly important. Family, culture, and history. When you welcome fellow Bangladeshis into your villages, your culture and history remain deeply rooted within the land. New people generates guarantees that new and old traditions can grow together and survive and thrive as well.
So super quick breakdown. Obviously, for cost, we're implementing bioswales, we're implementing 2 different power plants and a retention reservoir, the largest cost of that coming from our geothermal power plant. But there are opportunities within this system to find how they interplay with each other so we can cut costs in one area as we pull from others.
Yeah, so from our investors, we're looking for about $600 million. About 400 million, so 2/3 would ideally be a loan, about 5% interest rates. We're just kind of zhuzhing some numbers out here. With that $400 million loan, we're going to have to pay it back. We will do that through the sale of energy. And so that loan is paying for the bioswale, the 2 generation plants, and the reservoirs. We've got 3 pieces of infrastructure here, but we're going to pay for all of it with the sale of energy. Using basic market cost of energy in Bangladesh right now and average usage, we were able to estimate that we could produce about $540 million a year in revenue. That is depending on how fast migrants settle into the area. So there will be a scale up as people move, and that scale up, this is peak capacity of what we could earn once it's fully at scale. Paying off our loan, it could take 3 to 7 years, depending again on that scaling up and in consideration of the revenue cost versus operational costs. In general, this means we've got every year before the loan is paid about $30 million in profit to spend. And once their loan is paid off, which is a super short time period for a large investment of infrastructure like this, we could have up to almost $300 million a year to spend on other cool stuff to do.
And again, our project is really a holistic approach. We're not just focused on coming in, developing the area and dipping. We're focused on building up the entire nation as a whole. We're going to do that through our agricultural framework. Bangladesh is a predominantly 80% agriculturally based economy. And because of that, we want to be able to continue that relationship with them. Whether that continues to be a huge sector of their economy or not, is going to continue to yield high and be fruitful. So we're going to do that with better irrigation processes, thanks to the reservoir via canals. We're going to do that with greenhouses, even though they are along the equator, they can't grow crops year-round. Rooftop gardens will help purify the air, especially in areas with so much smog. A new process called agroforestry will allow for both carbon sequestration, but also food production, and then research and innovation within the food sector as well. But of course, the general infrastructure that the area will also be improved greatly by this project: power grids, roads, schools, hospitals, and of course all of the hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that will come along with it, with maintenance, construction, electricians, farmers, engineers, and supporting logistics, allowing us to have a nation-building project.
So the whole point of this is rural spaces that are low population density are going to have migrants come in. We might as well build right from the ground up and invest in proper infrastructure. We chose innovative options. We chose innovative geothermal. We're thinking agroforestry. We're thinking beyond just what we do on a day-to-day. This means it's adaptive to the future. So we showed you this before, and now we're showing you again, but we've added hydro, and we've got thermal heat transfer for hot water, and we've got greenhouses and irrigation and agriculture built into our water and energy systems. While they are interdependent, they are also diversified and resilient and regenerative. And that's it.
Good job. Sorry, I'm behind the wall. It's a funny slide. I think it's, of course, a great idea. I'm really thrown off by those pictures, but I really appreciate that you took this concept of like a system that can be applied like all over the world to deal with this problem, and then really honing in, focusing on one place first in order to try and make it work. Because of course, like I think that there's very big concerns whenever you have like a mass resettlement and like a foreign company coming in and saying like, hey, here's how you should live now. People who already exist there and people who are moving there. But in terms of like the geothermal system, for this example, 7 kilometers deep is very deep. Okay. Cool. Yeah, sounds like a really cool project. I have a question. Your project is big and bold, covering a variety of a lot of different topics, sort of throwing them all together. Could each of you share which parts of the project you find most interesting and how your individual backgrounds contributed to your work this week?
I can start. That was a concern that we talked about as a group when we were like spitballing ideas. But I think the intersection of like all of our backgrounds is what really motivated us to like find a way to make this idea work. I personally am the water person in this practice. I have a biology background, so the environmental end of things and utilizing the environment to the best of our ability on top of infrastructure is where I fit into that and what interested me most about this approach.
Yeah, I am in my grad program at Antioch with Eve and Kate, and I'm very interested in like systems design and systems thinking. So I was definitely the devil on the shoulder pushing us to think more about like how different pieces connect and like go a little bit more abstract. I also do a lot of community engagement work. So I was really interested in including the cultural engagement and community kind of resilience piece into how the conversations would happen and what the stakeholder engagement would look like.
At Virginia Tech in my environmental science degree, I focused a lot with agriculture, and that's also just what I grew up doing in my personal life, what I still am here with today. And I was really surprised to learn about the agricultural processes in Bangladesh, and what I really liked about this process, and what I was so surprised about this process, was that it doesn't disrupt the current systems within Bangladesh. It just takes it and puts it somewhere else. Of course, it's a mega project like no other, but it is going to be necessary, and if we can reduce the number of disruptions within the current processes, it will make our project more successful.
I obviously stood behind the energy part as an engineer, and I love that, but I must admit that the most fun part was how Korean made it possible to incorporate all of that stuff in one piece, which is so exciting, and it's wonderful that we can help a lot of people all around the world, and it's all in one project. It's all there, and like just learn from mistakes which were done in the past, and I guess never again.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to just build one piece of infrastructure and then plug it into something else, but thinking about how to build multiple pieces and to integrate them so they are more resilient is like a lot harder and more interesting, and also like the only way that we are going to have like regenerative systems in the future is if we do combine more diverse thinkers and like combine systems that way.
It is a big, old system, but it is also a necessary system.
I think it's fascinating. I think you, like, looks like you looked at like the geothermal park at the city and then built a little town around it. I think that's like a really good application of like what we did on the program, but also with your own interests. So yeah, great job. Next.
Oh, you're missing.
Hi everyone. So just really great presentations about kind of like changing environments and climates and like how to change with the changing times. And our project is kind of really different. I mean, it's a product, which is like different than I guess an organization. But we decided that we wanted to do our Capstone Project on something we called a Baco bag. And we're really excited to share it with you. So, okay, so the why behind our project, plastic pollution has burdened our planet for decades and has contaminated everything in every ecosystem. Microplastics have infiltrated the air we breathe, the water we drink, and even the food we eat, posing potential risks to human health and ecosystems alike. We already know that microplastics have many negative physiological effects on every part of the human body. These negative effects include breathing difficulties, birth defects, skin cancer, lung problems, headaches, and so many more. So our approach to kind of solving this and dealing with this is sustainable packaging, which is not yet widely available or implemented, which would decrease the amount of microplastics ending up in ecosystems. Okay, so we have this graph, and it shows how much plastic has been produced worldwide in million metric tons over the past 73 years. So as shown, there's been a continuous and significant increase in plastic production. It has more than doubled over the past 20 years, despite the fact that it is widely known that plastic is destroying our environment and ecosystems. Now, you might be thinking that our product would discourage people from recycling their plastic. Well, this graph from the EPA highlights that how much plastic ends up in landfills every year. As shown, there are millions of tons of plastic that are not recycled or turned into energy annually, which is a huge problem. So while recycling is the best case scenario, this is obviously not happening at a large enough scale. So this is where our product comes in.
Alright, before we get into what the product is, I wanted to give a little quick background on the science that's going to be behind it. So the discovery of plastic degrading microbes has unveiled new avenues for addressing the global plastic pollution crisis and has the potential to revolutionize waste management practices. So the development of these microbes can completely change the plastic economy throughout the world through biodegradation and enzymatic recycling of polymers. Alright, so the moment we've all been waiting for is when what is our product? Our product is a free trash bag made of corn, so it's biodegradable, lined with the dormant spores of thermophilic plastic-eating bacteria. So, to get into that, bacteria are prokaryotic microorganisms that can secrete enzymes to digest surrounding organic matter. So the specific strain of sporulating bacteria that we will be trying to find is going to be thermophilic. So that means they can only undergo cellular processes in extremely hot environments. And according to the EPA, landfills typically range from 90 to 131 degrees Fahrenheit, which generally aligns with the this like thermophilic environment of a bacteria. Once the spores undergo germination, which would be in this extreme heat, and metabolism begins, they will start to break down plastic within the bag, and eventually the biodegradable bag will decompose, releasing the bacteria into the rest of the landfill so it can start working these processes on the other plastic and overall decreasing the sheer volume of plastic in landfills. Alright. And so because they are thermophilic, that means we don't have to worry so much about the risk factor of the bacteria spreading to other areas and possibly affecting outside ecosystems, because most ecosystems are not going to be this hot all the time where the bacteria can't survive. Alright, so how will we do this? By using relevant findings, conducting extensive research and product development, our project will successfully introduce the spores of plastic metabolizing bacteria into landfills with biodegradable trash bags as the vesicle. So mainly what we would focus on first, there is tons of research so far finding microbes that can degrade plastic and turn it into more of a biological piece of matter, but we need to find something that is thermophilic and also spore producing for our product to really work. So we will be researching these processes to also determine what enzymes in the bacteria that we find break down materials for nutrients and make genetic alterations to make this nutrient for them plastic. Alright, and so key activities we will be doing ongoing research to ensure that, to keep finding more bacteria that can break down different types of plastic, because not all plastic is the same. So we need to, continue developing and progressing in that manner. Community engagements. We will be working with communities by, spreading these bags out and making people feel like they're making a sustainable difference, and that's very influential to personal growth in a sustainable way. And then product production, of course, we get to actually make the bags and get them out there. And then site visits to ensure what we're doing is actually working and making a difference.
I just want to point out that our product is automatic. So our partners, key stakeholders, are lab facilities and testing centers. We've already been working on these for 20 to 30 years. We're all over the world. China's investing a lot of money into this because they have a lot of waste. So we're going to be looking at university partnerships, manufacturing partnerships by plastic producers, also waste management facilities, and other people who run waste management facilities, as well looking into this research, finding a way to reduce their landfills. So we're going to engage the cities to integrate our product into the municipal waste program to get a trash bag lined with biodegrading or plastic-eating spores. And we want to collaborate with the landfill operators for pilot programs too. So we're a 501c, we're a nonprofit. These bags are free. We're going to give them away. So we're going to develop a strong endowment to do that with. We also need a strong interdisciplinary team and funding strategies to continue financing our product and strategic partnerships with these researchers, municipalities, and the waste management companies. Slide. Our additional funding research is going to come from places like the NSF, the EPA, and the USDA, and also private sustainability grants from companies like Patagonia and the Gates Foundation. And also corporate and philanthropic donations. Partner with waste management companies like we spoke about on the last slide, and then also large corporations who have sustainability commitments and requirements. That's coming on the slide. Our cost structure revenues, since we're 501c, we're doing our product for free. We're still kind of in the early validation phase. We don't have fixed price structures. We can't tell you how much it's going to cost to make this product. We're working with laboratories that are funded by countries. And a lot of them aren't going to talk to us about how much money we're spending on things. They're certainly not going to reveal their science and their research to anybody. So it's going to be a matter of time. But our goal is to co-develop one of these frameworks with our strategic partners and early adopters, which we hope to be in line with, and ensure alignment with both their market demands and operational scalability. So those are our product to them as well, why we're raising money. So the type of intervention, of course, our products designed to transform plastic waste deposited in landfills by biodegradable products. The way we're going to reach our consumers and also our funders and partners through social media, and then partnerships with sustainable development-driven organizations, and then also grassroots organizing. So our value proposition for consumers is pretty straightforward. We're going to transform your plastic and harmless or useless products by you taking in our free plastic bags that we give you, you put your trash in it, they go to landfill, which is going to be supported by your municipality or city or state. And once those start to degrade, our stores will lie, basically eat the plastic in our landfills, which turns it into something biodegradable. Science-backed solution to combat greenwashing. We're trying to sell you something that isn't real. We're trying to build trust in synthetic biology just overall for transparent, traceable results. Most people are GMO and they think that we're the devil. For industry and business, we're going to offer a turnkey technology for these biodegradation and recycling, which they can use for tax liabilities, also government reporting requirements. We could also license based white label integration with existing waste streams, which is an important part of our business plan. Reduce waste disposal costs and align with SDG goals. Next slide, please. And since we're a 501c, our surplus really is just part of our endowment, but everything goes to continuous research, community outreach, and slide, please.
That's right. I know everybody's super excited about this, but we're hitting on why this is the same thing. So there are plenty of considerations to be made for the product the product can be put into action. While genetic engineering tools offer exciting possibilities for biodegradation, this product proposes a convergence of ongoing research and product design, so there will be limitations. For example, genetically engineered bacteria might have a long-term impact on the atmosphere and on human beings. Escaping engineered microbes could interact with non-target organisms, raising ecological and biosafety concerns. Our understanding of the genetic and metabolic pathways involved in plastic degradation is incomplete, making it a challenge to design effective consumer products. The lack of specificity in genetic tools may inadvertently disrupt non-plastic and environmental components, preventing ecological disturbance. Then there's the development side of it. Cost of development and maintenance of engineered strains, along with incomplete understanding of plastic degradation pathways, hinder widespread adoption. Consumer awareness and adoption depends on many factors, like realization. Who's the target goal of this product? If people are not using it, then we're not doing our job, so we need it to be adopted. So while there are significant potential there is significant potential to employ various bacterial strains for efficient degradation of plastics to improve human health and safety. The biodegradation of plastics relies on matching the appropriate catalyst to the target polymer. And because the composition of these materials vary widely throughout our homes and solid waste sites, we're not proposing a one-size-fits-all solution. Ongoing research is being conducted to quantify the efficiency and harmful impacts from the biodegradation of synthetic polymers and cannot be covered in the scope of this presentation. This product is meant to streamline the availability of sustainable solutions to consumers and provide them with a convenient way to be engaged with creating a greener future. So that's a good segue to the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, we've talked about them already. They're all interconnected. So when one thing happens, it tends to make another thing easier to achieve. And for our purposes of this particular product, whether there's potentially more implications if it works, then initially you can say that engagement with a product like this contributes to responsible consumption and a greater awareness of everyone's stake in contribution in the issue of plastic accumulation, which would be 17. For innovative products and infrastructure, SDG 917, the product is designed to degrade and reduce the volume of plastics in landfills. It's a convenient solution, so easier to use, and trash bags are already utilized, so it wouldn't be difficult to get people to use it. Sustainability complex. On an individual level, the bags will make people feel like they're doing something to help the climate crisis. On a city level, they will be able to reduce our plastic waste, and which will result in environmental improvements in communities, and on a regional, national, and global level, these bags reduce plastic waste in landfills.
Alright, and then this is just a quick conclusion of everything that we just discussed, just so that you guys can visualize it in one page. Does anyone have any questions?
I had a question. So, of course, it sounds like there's some barriers between the current state of the technology and feasibility. What do you think are major hurdles that would need to be overcame in the R&D section before you could make this product feasible?
I think our biggest issue right now is getting the research to a point where we can distribute it safely, because this is a living organism. While it is dormant in the spore state, we don't exactly know what it's going to do, when it's going to do it, and we also have to find a very specific thing where one, it is relating to it is also, it's sporulating, it is thermophilic, and we can easily alter the metabolizing enzymes in a way that it breaks down plastic, which are techniques that have been done before. It's just the fact of making these things all work together and work correctly and safely enough times to where we can say this is something that is feasible.
Finding a combination that works with all the research that's out there. We just have to put those pieces together. So that's kind of what the R&D process is for.
There's a question about this is obviously once it does work, would be a very valuable thing, and I'm just curious about why the commitment to not charging for the bags, and how, once you do have some kind of production logistics worked out, how would that business model sustain itself if you're not selling the product?
Well, it's a free product. So when people start using it and reducing plastic waste, so there is no model to move forward to paying grams per product. The idea is that we own licenses, we own the rights to it, and partner with universities and other research labs. So they also aren't going to go to a paying model. So the idea is to get it used and consistently used. People don't have to pay for That's why we would use our money to build an endowment to continue our product research and improvement.
And through our social media, but we would also have an option for donations for people that support like sustainable development, like this. The reason I don't think we expressed quite clearly why it would be free. It's kind of bad of greenwashing, things being priced up because it says it's eco-friendly, but it's really not doing much. So it's something that really makes a statement like, this is eco-friendly and our goal is to help the environment, not to make money. Like most products in the sustainability realm kind of are doing, not most, but a lot are doing, and people are starting not to trust it, and which makes them kind of give up the goal of being eco-friendly at an individual level.
We should talk about, I think it's slide 11.
Just to touch on it.
Yeah, everywhere, right? Yeah.
What are the sizes of bags? Is this like a grocery bag or is this like
Trash bag.
Kitchen trash bags.
Is this something you can see going into industrial size dumpsters to start that process already?
We thought about just spreading bacteria across the landfill just like that, but we really wanted to engage people because the biggest problem with climate change and sustainable development is absolutely getting people on board. Like the biggest thing is people, and we want people to feel included and to feel like they're helping, so that they're more engaged with the climate crisis and trying to solve it.
And whether or not they're spreading it across everywhere, like they're going to use a trash bag. So if this becomes ubiquitous and everybody's using this trash bag, that's at least one less plastic product going into a landfill, and it helps to break down what's already there. So it's like,
This is a degradable plastic.
yeah, the bag itself breaks down. So it's, you're not putting plastic in with your trash bag and the plastic that's going with it. Okay, sir?
As a consumer, how long does it take for the trash bag to break down? Because I've had, depending on some landscapes and businesses, that trash bag might be in there for a couple of months, and then I don't know what you put in there. Would that accelerate the
Products that are developed, we'll let you know.
We plan to work with biodegradable trash bags that already exist, just to minimize complication with trying to develop something biodegradable, because that's kind of like a whole different thing. So we work with them and use the product that's already made, that already works.
If you were to continue doing this beyond the program, what do you think your first steps would be in terms of like getting this towards that stage? It's a really cool idea, and
I
I
have
love the
an answer for that
concept.
because I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, shoot,
I
that'd be
would
great.
work with people that are developing AI models for metabolic pathways to match up what we need to make this happen safely, and what get a model in place and then do a lab run of it to find out what the byproducts are. From there we can find out what can be utilized, but it would definitely be like modeling of metabolic pathways would be the first thing I would do. Because there's so much research out there, but it's just like, here's a thing that might do a thing, but nobody's like putting it all together. So this is just an attempt to do that. Like, there's research, but nobody's like making any solutions. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, cool.
AI research.
Graduate college.
That's the
Maybe my master's in microbiology. I wanted to do that.
And just one more question. What do you think the hurdles would be into getting the bacteria in addition to eating the plastics, but also to sing opera?
Oh man.
Singing opera.
It would have to be in Iceland.
Yeah,
We would have to.
What was the first question before the opera?
No, that was it. Yeah.
They could hang out with my acapella group, and we could teach them.
You're wonderful. Yeah, all right, good job, guys.
Where's the dance?
Jeff, come on.
That was a whole slide.
You guys killed my slide. I don't know.
Your spot.